Okay, I think we should start. We have a lot to cover. Welcome, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to the presentation on monitoring your application environment with a peace of mind. My name is Marek Bujnarowski. I've been working at Progress for 24 years, always on the front lines, helping customers to be successful, solving problems. Spent 15 years at EMEA Technical Support Center in Rotterdam, and then 9 years ago I moved to consulting role, joining MDBA team to build a business in Europe. And currently I'm driving the teams of consultants, the best consultants Progress could get on backend side of the infrastructure in Europe and Asia Pac. I'm usually not the best presenter, so bear with me, don't be too harsh on me. If I get stuck or paralyzed, please don't leave the room, it's gonna pass away. So, during the last few days, you saw quite a few sessions on monitoring different components of OpenEdge infrastructure. We have quite a lot of tools at your disposal. We have OpenTelemetry, we have OpenEdge Management, we have Protop. There are some homemade solutions available that some presenters showed us, shared their experience with us. Brian showed nice monitoring of the PASOE. Patrice from Proginov showed how to dive into some statement cache and get some more information about what you're running, what actually is happening. All those sessions, including this one, convey one very important message, which is monitoring is important. You cannot take any effective action if you don't know what's going on in your system. And you cannot really do anything proactive if the lights are off. You have to turn on the lights to actually be aware that something is wrong, that something requires your attention, and something needs action. Corrective, preventative, adaptive, whatever you have to do, you need some information, some data. So this session will be about another solution that responds to certain situations related to monitoring in situations when you don't know what to do with this data. You can monitor as much as you want, you can collect as much metrics, as much KPIs as you want, but it's sort of meaningless if you don't do anything with that. And in addition, if you don't have anybody, maybe you know, but you have nobody to actually look at this. So our agenda for today is quite straightforward. Because I cannot talk about monitoring in separation. In this case, monitoring is a part of the service. So I'm going to talk about some sort of a MAS model. I don't even know if such an acronym officially exists, but it's like monitoring as a service, where we provide, as Progress, a sort of all-in-one protection framework to keep you safe, to monitor and to provide everything you need to stay protected, to run without anything unwanted or unexpected. So first I'm going to introduce you to the MDBA service, what it contains, what's it all about, what is the value proposition here. And then the core of the session will be to give you a sort of a sneak peek into the monitoring dashboard that we use, our teams are using, and also our managed customers are using to be aware of their health, their status, and getting all the information from their own environments. And then we will wrap up. I will give you step-by-step overview of almost every page in our dashboard that shows how we present data and what we do with this, how we sort of correlate information, and how it helps us to deliver the service. So manage MDBA. I'm not going to read the slides on top of what you can see, what you can read. The best way to describe MDBA is that this is a really like all-in-one protection framework that consists of 3 elements. Monitoring infrastructure, which is a backbone of the whole service. Then methodology, know-how, it's all included. And also resources to take actions, to look into the data, to analyze information, to draw conclusions, and to convert them into effective actions to make sure that there's nothing bad happening, with the focus on prevention, but also with very tight SLAs for reactive service, so as we could react as fast as possible to anything unwanted. If we're talking about the services, we're talking about people, their expertise. So this is actually strength of the MDBA service. Our resources, we allow customers to absorb a portion of our expertise, and very experienced consultants with many, many years of experience in open edge technologies, especially on the backend side, but also with some backgrounds in many different places of open edge products, open edge technology that have been there for years. Every consultant on the team has 20 plus years of experience, and in general, this is what helps, because usually experience is very important on top of the knowledge and expertise, because we basically recover somebody or some customer almost on a daily basis. So that gives us a sort of like huge advantage if we come across any kind of problems that we already know that it happened somewhere else. So we can sort of cut investigation process short, and we can we can actually get to the root cause analysis and the root cause or potential possible causes very quickly without need of the too much of the time spent on analysis. So this team is spread across the globe, so as we can provide 24/7 coverage for our customers. And most of the team is based in US. There are 15 consultants over there. We have 5 consultants in Europe and 3 consultants in Australia. So in general, there is a 4th component of the service, and I have to mention this, which is rules of engagement. We adapt, we adjust to specific customers' needs which depends on different factors, like level of access, level of permissions we get, what are the requirements for some governance required for certain services. So we definitely, this is very flexible, this is different for different customers, and in many cases it's just mutual agreement what exactly should happen when disaster occurs. In this case, well, using some airplane analogy, if your business is a plane, we can be your air traffic controllers with all the instrumentation and data and information feeding you with all this during your flight, so as you can go around any obstacles. We can be your co-pilots if there are some difficult maneuvers needed, or maybe we can even take over the plane if your pilot needs some rest or some vacation. So in general, this is really flexible, this is really established during the onboarding process when we set up the rules, what actually exactly happens when some actionable situation comes to our emergency channels and we have to take action. So first, I'm going to tell you how we collect data. Just a few slides about how we collect this data, what really happens, so as we have this information, what is the data flow, and how we make it possible. Then we have information that we further process and present visualized in the form of graphs that I will show later. For every customer during onboarding process, we install monitoring tool, which we call ProMonitor. That's quite an old tool that was created by Dan Foreman a long time ago for debugging, investigating, troubleshooting different problems, especially with databases. And then it was sort of adapted to be used for the service. It was changed, it evolved, and it became our data collector on the front-end customers' machines. So we installed this tool. This is a Progress tool, Progress ABL application with some character UI still to sort of set it up, configure, and also use it sometimes for reviewing the data, seeing the metrics, and maybe even troubleshooting on the front end, on the customer's machines, if need be, if there are some requirements for that. But basically, it serves the purpose of gathering all we need. For databases, we just connect normal IBL clients and we grab all VST information and store it locally on the customer machine in normal Progress database. We keep this information, all the statistics. It has nothing to do with a user data. These are just VST system tables, metrics, any KPIs, any kind of information that we can get so as we could process this data later. Every hour, or even more frequently, it also depends, it's very flexible, very configurable depending on the situation. We adapt to the current activity in the customer's environments, in applications, the workloads, the number of transactions. It's sort of the first few months after installation, well, maybe not months, but weeks, we are adapting and adjusting this, monitoring these data collectors to gather the data that we need for certain events. Maybe there is a site who is struggling with long-running transactions. Maybe there is a site who is struggling with some other specific problems due to specifics of the application and its activity. Then the data collection is being adjusted and adapted to particular needs, so as we watch what we need to watch and we are notified about the events that we want to be notified about. So in general, this data stored in there is being pushed, is being uploaded from front-end machines to our central database. So we store this data in our central database for all the customers, which is sort of ready for processing when we usually have it at hand whenever a problem happens, and also to process this for visualization and basically presentation layer. I don't know if I forgot anything about that, but definitely all those sampling periods, all those upload periods are adjusted. There might be different for customers. These are just default values. We used to be uploading data once a day in the past. Now it's not that common frequency. When we upload data, it's just 1 hour. It can be done faster, depending on how real-time data we want to see in our front-end UI. And of course, this whole monitoring infrastructure allows us to offer very tight SLAs, which is just response times. We promise all our customers that every critical, actionable situation will get our attention within 1 hour. For anything non-critical, the SLA is 2 hours. So that's for reactive service. That means that our ProMonitor this data collector on the front end also has an alerting subsystem. We're setting up the thresholds for certain events. We're setting like long running transactions, how long they should run, what is normal, what is not normal is being decided during the first adaptation period. And if something is sort of reaching the threshold, it's triggering the alert, and notification is being sent to our emergency channels, where a consultant who is currently on shift is picking up and it gets his full attention. Then he checks all the details about the account, about the customer, and actually follows these rules of engagements that I talked about. So he checks what should he do. Should he connect to the customer and fix the problem, then disconnect, everything is fine, customer is not really interested, or maybe he should notify somebody, or maybe do some other actions. Maybe we don't have any access to the customer, then we sort of pulling a proper group from the customer side, setting up the meeting, setting up screen share sessions, and then we help to resolve the problem for reactive service. Some of the alerts are not really meaning that something disastrous, catastrophic happened. We are setting long-running transactions is the first example, because this is something that has consequences and might lead to disaster, but it's still critical for us and it's still actionable. In certain cases, when it's safe, we can automate action by disconnecting this customer or killing the session, and depending on what user actually was running and was blocking and creating a lot of logs. So we would like to release and don't let our BI file to grow. So that's, my point is, every critical alert is actionable for us, but it not necessarily mean that this critical alert is already a catastrophe. Storage area thresholds are set so as we wouldn't fill up the storage, or we still ensure writing to the fixed extents and prevent overflow to the variable ones, for example, because the disk speed tests are showing, hey, your fixed extents are faster, the writes are faster to those extents, then it's still, there's time to take action before disaster happens. So this is to show you that even reactive service has some proactivity aspects here. So now, regarding the dashboard, this is just a leading slide here showing some of the graphs, metrics on the slide. But what I want to say is this portal is mainly for our managed accounts. This is part of the service. Every customer that is MDBA is getting access to that. But it's also for us to quickly check the status. Every consultant who owns a particular account and takes care of the particular customer is reviewing this on the regular basis, at least once a week, just to check if everything is fine, if there are no outliers, there are no anomalies detected, and then passing some recommendations to the customer or taking an action depending on what was agreed. Historically, we had another portal that was really for experts, for somebody who really knew what he was looking at. The cognitive load was very, very high, which is time it takes for you to understand what you're seeing, because there's just a bunch of numbers and tables and the grids with some color coding assistance. When certain thresholds, certain activity was beyond those thresholds, they were just showing, hey, look, in this area, it requires some attention. So it wasn't that really comfortable and useful for either customer or maybe not our team, because our team is sort of well-experienced consultants who prefer numeric data. We're just drilling into this data, trying to put things together, correlate different information from different places, and that's sometimes easier. But for customers, it was a little bit useless. We didn't have high utilization of this dashboard. Really a handful of customers were using this because it was simply too complicated, and it was just this cognitive load was too high. They couldn't put all the things together. It took an expert to understand it. So at some point we decided, let's modernize. let's change things, let's change user experience, let's make it more useful, and also for us to have a very quick way of checking how the customer is doing. Instead of like going through the numbers and deciding, hey, everything is fine, we need some really better way to show the status. Hey, this resource doesn't require attention, it's been running fine, everything is okay, no need to waste time on this. So that was like a mutually beneficial project that resulted in completely new user experience using using as much Progress technology as possible. We explored different options. We checked Grafana on the front end, we checked some different platforms, what to do with this data, but in the end, the decision was made, let's use as much Progress technology as possible because it's better for us if we need some changes or we need to adjust things. And okay, at this point, it's important to say the portal itself was designed and developed by people who are delivering the service. So it was based on our experience with customers, real life use cases when something was needed and we really had a trouble to understand what we're seeing. So let's try to use this experience and let's create something that is really useful in real life. So that's still developed by our own team and maintained and continuously evolving. That means that if we come across any situation that we believe that dashboard might be useful here, but we are missing some information, then we have this ability to put it in place and to display it. Which, for the next similar case, is much easier. Definitely, I mentioned we're using as much as Progress technology as possible. That means that what we do, I already mentioned, we pull and upload all the information from all our customers to one central database. It's a Progress database. Then we have another database which we call data warehouse, where we store only the data that we need for presentation layer, for performance purposes and to keep it clean. Then on the front-end dashboard, we're using Telerik, Kendo UI, Kendo React libraries, where we sort of set up the portal, which is making a REST API calls to the AppServer, the OpenEdge 12.2, extracting needed data and metrics, running some business logic, and fetching all the information that any widget that were coming from the portal requests. I think I covered all the points here, I suppose, and how modern it is you will see in a moment, and what we collect, how we present, it's going to be in the next part of this session. Original plan was to walk you through like 30 slides, screenshots from our dashboard, the most important pages, and to give you this look and feel and to give you the better sense of how this dashboard looks like, and also what data we collect, how we present it, and how we sometimes use it. But I'm going to take a risk now, and I'm going to do a sort of a demonstration on the live instance of the portal, using the data from our own MDBA infrastructure, so all this backend database, warehouse database, whatever we have on our MDBA side, because I cannot show other customers' metrics. So I won't be able to show everything in this demonstration, and of course, this is going to be a live portal. I hope it's going to work, and we won't have any problems. And in case there are some problems, we can always get back to slides. So, the portal is available from outside, so it's put up externally for our customers to connect. Every customer is our managed account can request access to this, can request credentials, and they're getting those credentials and are granted access to their own data. So there's a certain level of isolation and separation of data. They don't see any other customer's data, it's just their own. I'm having a demo account here that is only seeing the data from our own infrastructure, MDBA, our progress servers and the resources that we also monitor. So let me log in. This is the landing page, which shows some generic information, overall information about the environment that is under monitoring with resources that we sample broken by type. So we have a list of the databases, we have file system status, we have also middleware, like ubrokers or PASOE instances running. On top of the home page, there are some basic 3 pieces of data telling what is the total number of databases and what is the total size. So you can see our environment itself is 26 terabytes. In general, there is a very most important button that actually allows you to set the time frame for the data to be displayed. So this is the period which we want to observe, which we want to use for our investigation or checkup, or we want to set a specific time when the data is displayed and presented for us. So this information is for the last 24 hours. There is some color coding. This actually page tells you, is everything fine? Was there anything unexpected detected? Was anything captured? So it's based on alerting. Whenever there was a problem, something was detected, any threshold was reached, the resource turns red or orange, depending on the severity of the alert. And then you can sort of like see immediately that some resource had a problem within the defined period, and we have to look into this, right? So here, of course, this environment is pretty much in a good shape, so it's going to be very difficult to demonstrate any issues. But let's say for the last 6 months, you want to check if there was any problem. You can stop me, okay. But anyway, you don't have to stop it, because during the last 6 months, we already had a DB down alert, and for 2 databases. And this is just to show you how we make it obvious on the dashboard. How there's a resource, there's a DB down alert. If there any other event happened in this environment, it would show up on the screen as well. Of course, there are some contextual links here. So whenever you click on the, let's say, the resource name, you can directly are taken to relevant another page that is linked and allows you to drill and get more information about it. But for now, let's get back to the home page. So alerting is just an indicator of how stable you were, what happened in your environment. So this is a quite frequently used page that is showing actually what kind of events happened, what kind of situations occurred that required some actions. It's sort of classified by severity as well, and by type of event. Was it a DB down? Was it a file system filling up? Was it a critical, or was it just a warning, or maybe some minor event? For the longer span, let's take 12 months, there were not that many events. Normally, it's much more critical situations is happening. So those statistics are very useful to sort of assess how stable you were during the period that you chose. And also the trend chart will give you some idea if you're going the right direction. So if there are many critical alerts related to file system, was this file system getting full? Was the situation resolved, and how quickly? Because then you will see that The next month, there's less number of alerts or detected anomalies or problems, and this is on decrease. That means we're going the right direction. We're resolving slowly problems that are happening in our environment, which means that things are going into well, right? But if the number of events are on increase and they're increasing continuously, that means something is going on wrong. So the situation is getting worse. We probably not tackling the right issues. So some drilling will be required here. And of course, there is a list of events exactly under the charts just to show exactly when it happened and what happened at a specific time. In this case, we only have two types of events. There is a file system, space was getting full, and database was down. We detected that this database was not running on this particular date, on this particular hour. So I'm going to change this to 24 hours, so as data would be fetched quicker. Of course, during the last 24 hours, nothing happened. Getting back to this time period, maybe it's important to see, you can see also the last hour, the more real-time data, but of course it depends how often you upload. If you upload every, let's say, half an hour, then 1 hour, it makes sense to tell you this is the status for the last hour. And then there are some 12 hours, 24 hours, but also you can check, hey, how was I doing last year? Right, so last year, that was the situation. So here I have flexibility to change the range of the information along, timeline from particular periods. What happened last week, you can sort of jump with different periods, and it's important to remember what you chose here. If you see something wrong, oh, sorry, it's happened last week, it was resolved, no problem here, even though you see some red bulbs or red indicators. Okay, so last 24 hours. So the next page is a little bit, well, some basic information about a system, how system is running, and basically in terms of file system growth, which is important for databases. It is not really uncommon that databases is crashing because the file system was rich. It has to be monitored. And of course, many customers are using their own kind of a system level monitoring for that. So this is more like to provide some contextual data in the context of correlation of what is happening with our openness resources in conjunction with the situation with the system overall. Here, of course, you can check the server you want to monitor, so you can have insight into each server separately and see if file systems are still okay, if you still have space, and also the CPU. If you're just experimenting with spin, it might be a good piece of information to see if there's no heat on CPU, if it's not getting overloaded, is OS load is not preventing you to increase it further. I'm going to, okay, this is default, so this is the server when our backend central database is. Everybody knows that disk speed is important. There are a lot of I/O-bound operations in progress, so we're also trying to get a sense of how fast are the disks where the databases are located. So all the system information is through the perspective of OpenEdge and the resources we monitor. So as we have this data at hand when we are analyzing certain situations and we need to know, okay, something happened with the disk or something, we can see some slowdowns or bottlenecks on the disk subsystems. And this is basically the speed test that we use for our own evaluation from progress perspective. This is how fast it takes to format BI clusters, which is one of the slowest operations in progress. It's a sequential write. And we're collecting data for both fixed extents, how fast it takes to write to the fixed extents, BI extents, versus variable ones. Nowadays, it's not always the case that we see that the variable ones are really slower. In this case, they are. So you can see fixed extents are much faster. here than verbal ones. Right? So that information gives us some clue that it might be good to make sure that we continuously writing to those fixed extents. Because if we overflow and the database will start writing to the verbal ones, some performance drop might be expected. And then we can monitor another thing, which is storage areas utilization, and I will show you in a moment. But again, it's not always the case that if the verbal extents are performing more or less the same as the fixed ones, this is not that critical to make sure that overflow doesn't happen. So we are sort of like using this data in the context of what we think elsewhere, because usually when you resolve one bottleneck on one side, you're definitely pushing it elsewhere, and you need the information from different places actually to understand the story, to understand what's going on. For the databases, I'm going to choose all of them. So again, you can choose here which server you want to observe, which server or box you want to examine or check. Or you can also display all the databases in the monitored environment, regardless where they reside. So there's this choice. For the last 24 hours, but this is the list of the database resources we monitor, with all the databases, with some basic information that is useful, some status indicators and also compliance indicators that are showing the databases that are part of your application. So here you have like which operating system they're running on, what is the OpenEdge version of this database, what is its actually physical size, actual size used, how many users are connected. Also, if after imaging is enabled, when the last backup was taken, and how long it's running without any shutdown, and what is the BI side. So all this basic information that you need at hand when you want to get a generic overview of database resources. We also have indicators, those bulbs, that are showing if background processes are started, and it's quite important. And we know it from other sessions as well. And let's say AIW should be up and running when you have after imaging enabled. So here, in this case, this is our backend database. After image is enabled, the bulb is green, and after imaging, AIW process is running. When it's not running, and the database is enabled for after imaging, it turns red. So if you have many databases, hundreds of databases on different sites, and you want to do a quick overview, skimming through your resources and see if everything is okay, maybe some background process crashed and doesn't run, you will immediately see the red bulb showing you the record, the line, when you should focus and check this particular database, what happened. Also, there is some the column that is showing us if this database is replicated using OpenEdge replication or Pro2. And again, I'm going to show you quickly. There are a lot of places when you can just click and go to the relevant page directly. Like for Pro2, you're just going directly to Pro2 screen. For OpenEdge replication, you can go directly to the charts that are showing you the status of the Pika buffer. So that's kind of like easier to navigate, and basically the drill paths are still refined based on the real experience, but we are trying to make sure that this links between the information is helpful for investigation, so you cut the investigation time as short as possible. So you don't waste too much time looking elsewhere and finding, oh, which screen was showing this particular info. I don't know why I'm clicking on the system overview all the time, but getting back to the list of the database. So this is basically showing you the total size of the database and the list of the databases with basic information. Whenever you click on any of this database as well, let's go to the backend one, you are directly taken to the activity screen of this specific database. where you see also a bunch of information that is very useful to assess what you're dealing with and how database is set up, what features are enabled, how many APWs are running. So you can see like 2 light bulbs here, green, there are two APWs. What is the block size of the database? All the information that you don't have to look elsewhere. Sometimes reviewing the startup of the database broker and the log file to see what actually parameters, those basic parameters, not everything, but the ones that are the most critical to fully understand what this database is all about. Also some BI info, AI info, and some important startup parameters. And then we're having a sort of a overview of the activity, again, for the last 24 hours. We can, once again, change it like the last 7 days, so like a week. We can see that the database was still up, it wasn't shut down. When you hover your mouse over certain components here, elements and widgets, you can get some extra information that will give you some context and will tell you exactly what you're looking at. And then going to the charts, we have some really important basic activity metrics that are being presented so as you could get a sense of how database is being used. Right, so we have DB reads, how often we reach to disk. We have some CRUD operations, so record creates, deletes, updates. We definitely are. Let me get back to 24/7 period. So let's say we're looking at the record activity, and then we see here that there are a lot of record deletes. So as I'm saying here, you might see, if you don't remember about the time period you chose, you might see, oh, there's an anomaly, there's a spike. What should I do? And of course, graphs allows you to actually drill into more detailed time frames, so you can use your, let's say, mouse scroll, or you can just select the period you want to monitor. Maybe you want to see this period or the other one, or basically read this information on different graphs. We're still working on correlating this information, providing some help for users to, let's say, to have like a pointer on multiple graphs when you're going through the timeline and it's showing the values on multiple graphs. That's in work in progress. But definitely this dashboard is sort of evolving and it's changing, but this is the current situation. At this moment, you have to jump through certain graphs to see what's going on. So seeing the spike, usually the first thing you want to check is like, okay, let's see if in the larger span, in the longer period, and you can see that actually it's a sort of like a regular process. And that's related to our purging routine, that we're deleting records for certain tables on the regular basis to keep our database in check. So that's normal. So basically, this is just a very mini show to tell you how to actually use this data. So what do we have here? There are so many screens. I have a tendency to tell you the whole story about each chart, and probably I won't have time for it, and I want to show as many as possible, as much as possible. So I'm going to really skim through and show you the list of what we collect and what we present. So BI image buffer weights. Here we don't have to change anything, but this requires action. There are insufficient number of BI buffers, and periodically we're just having a BI weight. So basically we can drill also into this period and make a decision. Now let's increase the BI buffer so it doesn't happen. We don't want it to happen. After image activity, also connections of different types. You can actually, okay, there's one thing that is important here, because we want to share our knowledge, our experience with customers. We want to make it as easy as possible for the customers. So whenever possible, we're putting some information and help. There's an informational button. Whenever you click, you will get extra information explaining what you see. So that's description, and it's not always telling you the metrics you're seeing. Sometimes also some suggestions. Hey, be careful about this situation. Well, if you have DB reads above, let's say, 100 per second, that means that there is really like a, I don't know, buffer pool is insufficient. You have to adjust -b, or maybe there is another action that is needed, right? So there are some tips and tricks as well here, but in general, it is showing, hey, this is what I'm seeing. So definitely for certain metrics, one thing you have to do is just to go to documentation or use our excellent knowledge base to extract this. But instead of this, the basic information is already available in the dashboard, so customers don't have to look it up, and they have a better understanding of what they're observing right now. And it's on many graphs, on many charts that we put this information. Not all, but it's, again, work in progress, and we're expanding on this knowledge-sharing experience that the customers are really appreciating, because they don't have to call us and ask, hey, okay, I'm seeing something here. Is there anything to worry about, right? So when they actually better understand what they're looking at, it's sort of like peace of mind, and that's fine. So we have clients, you know, stats, the connections and the clients, where we can actually, by the way, on every graph you can actually hide all the metrics, and you can choose what you want to see and what you want to debug. So let's say I want only ABL clients to be displayed, right? So I want some AppServer agents being displayed. There's also possibility, maybe not on this graph, but I will show you later, to change the type of the graph from linear to logarithmic, and especially when you have a very high ratio between certain data sets. There's a big difference between some data, and you want still to see them both on the one graph. Logarithmic scale is much easier to see some activity. And also large timeouts, which is sort of like a metric for concurrency bottlenecks, where you can see that this large timeouts actually is sort of like related to our purging process. So you can actually, again, drill into certain samples if this is unexpected, or if this is really detected as outlier and normal operations is different and you know nothing about it. It will immediately show you that there's something to look at, to worry about. Then on this activity screen, we also have log weights, and we track also the log table with high watermark, so we can basically have a sense how logs are being utilized in a database engine. So storage areas, I'm going to speed up a little bit. Storage areas, here we track storage areas for each database, so especially what I mentioned, sometimes we just make sure that the areas are not filling up, and we also make sure that there is always a variable extent as a fail-safe. And in many cases, in majority of the cases, we want customers to write to those fixed extents without any overflow. So we're usually tracking the storage areas with historical data, which helps to understand the growth and dynamics of the growth of this area. So let's say I choose one, now it's better, right? So we can basically see how fast the storage area is filling up with the data, and we can evaluate how much time we have before it fills up, and maybe before it fills up, we just add some extents, doing some extent maintenance, plan it at the most possible moment without any emergencies, without any urgency or rush. I'm going to speed up a little bit. Of course, backups are important. Okay, this one we don't backup that often. This is backend database, 20 terabytes, 10 terabytes, and we're using OpenEdge replication, but let me check some development machines. Let's say this one. So it's the last 7 days. This database is being backed up every day, but there is a sort of like a calendar showing you the green indicators that everything went fine, backup was taken, so you can be sort of like confident that if there is a need to restore to a certain date, you have a backup, depending on, of course, of your DR policies and the backup retentions and what are you doing with those backups and how long do you keep them. The concurrency metrics regarding latches deserve some separate web page that is showing a little bit more detailed view for processes and transactions activity that is competing for the shared resources, and whether we have any bottlenecks here or not. I'm going to choose our backend database where it's more activity. So this is for the last 7 days, but again, if you don't know what all those acronyms means, the way is to, let's go to knowledge base and say, hey, what this latch means actually AIB. But you can also click here and, okay, it's down. You can have a list of all the latches that we're presenting on the graph and what they mean, what they do. I'm going to change to 24 hours period, so it's going to be a little bit easier. So what do we have here? It's latch weights, latch logs, resource weights, resource logs, and TXC weights, transaction end weights, and logs. Right? So there are some basic latches that you observe in case, and you want this information when you debug certain concurrency bottlenecks issues or some performance problems that might indicate issues. This is data usually is using with correlation with some other data, but definitely it's very critical for debugging any bottlenecks in your database engine. Also, for long-running transactions, we do have transaction activity page that is showing the transactions that are running with the ratio and also before image file size. We can see all the current active transactions and the BI buffer weights. This screen was already in activity screen, but because here it makes sense also to show, it's sort of repeated here, so it's here just to quickly correlate and to see, compare the data. What do you see? We're planning to create, in one of the next versions, to give possibility to rearrange all the widgets how customers prefer. So creating some custom pages when you can just drag some widgets and graphs and put it next to each other so the data is clear, you can correlate easier, those kind of stuff. But this is not there yet, so there are some pages when we have to repeat the graphs because it makes sense to have this information here. And also, here you have to believe me because we haven't had any long-running transactions for years. Here, this system is in a good shape, but then if there are any transactions running longer than 15 minutes, then we're going to showing up here with some basic information about it. And its status, whether it's still running or maybe it's completed. So if you have some also need for historical list of transactions that completed, but they were running long, like 15 minutes, it's configurable, but 15 minutes, for example, then you also have this information so as to debug to see what actually was happening, why they were running so long. Some extra drilling into BI size and the BI buffer weights and also BI reads and writes, so as we could get this information again at hand. If we are struggling with the BI graph, if we have to truncate it too often, we definitely need to have this information at hand. Then there is a PUG buffer, so this is related with operator replication. When I think I'm running out of time, so that's why I'm speeding a little bit. But here we can see the status, how many messages and how much is filled PUG buffer. So if there are any bottlenecks with replication, some network issues, and PUG buffer is filling up, then replication will sort of terminate. We want to prevent that. We want to observe this information and act in time. Very quickly, Pro2. So Pro2, we also monitoring Pro2 threads, replication threads. There might be multiple threads running, replicating different tables. So we are just actually monitoring the REPL queue table lock, how far behind the target is, how far target is behind the source, and also REPL queue size, how many records entries to actually replicate is still to be processed. I'm just really skimming through very quickly this, but there is, there much more to that. We also have CDC, right, tracking, so CDC queue lock and queue size. But There is a thread balancing. We don't have it here, but there is a way of understanding the association between the threads and the tables they're replicating. So you can see on the nice graph, which thread is actually processing which table, and actually what is the volume of the processing, which tables are the huge ones. And I have a screenshot, so I will show you in a moment. Table I/O, very useful sometimes for debugging some application issues as well. So to have a perspective from the table, on the table level and on the index level. So we can see the top activity on the table level, which tables are hit the most in terms of reads, creates, or any CRUD operations. We have some record activity that is actually in general statistics, but we can also drill into specific table. Let's say which one is the most used, this one, this IDX, and see a little bit more information about a table activity from this perspective. And let me choose another one. There's also a quite nice indicator showing us, okay, it's sort of initializing, showing us the ratio between the correlation between index reads and record reads. Right, so we can see that usually it should be diagonal line, straight line. There should be more or less the same index reads as record reads. It's not always the case, but it's showing that your indexes are utilized well. And sometimes, you can detect some unnecessary table scans here, because it will show that there are a lot of table reads, but really an insignificant number of index reads. And I probably won't find a table that's showing you the perfect example, but doesn't matter. The concept is here. The same for the table I/O, index I/O I already showed. There is a tab analysis and index analysis grids, and also quickly for middleware, because this is what I want to show as well, for PASOE. Okay, we don't have any application classic AppServers here, but for PASOE, we can, hold on, PASOE. For PASOE, we also collect basic information, and it's still work in progress. So we collect as much as we can. Not that long ago, we only were able to check the status, if the AppServer instance is up and running or it's down. And now the number of data we're pulling from AppServer for PASOE instances is growing. At this moment, we're just connect to the OE manager and collect whatever we can and process and visualize some basic information, so we get a sense how it's operating in terms of agent sessions, where you can see this capacity indicators, how many agents you're running, how many sessions per agent, all this stuff, and also requests, right? So when we don't want, for example, some sessions timeouts, so whenever there are some session timeouts, you can sort of drill into this and see, oh, during this time, there was something wrong. But also, we have a list of long-running requests, and this is the list of the requests that are running like longer than 10 seconds, but it's also configurable. So normally you can set a threshold and show me here only the transactions that are running like longer than 30 seconds. And if the session is still running and stack trace is available, you can just click on this button and see actually what this session, what is the stack trace for this particular session, which is still doing something. Then we request the stack trace and we display directly on in the dashboard. So you can see the call stack, what exact routine was running, and from which piece of code. So this is really quickly to give you an insight into this PASOE. And I think that's it for now. So in general, as I'm saying, the dashboard is continuously being developed. It continuously evolves and is being adjusted to particular needs based on the real use cases and any situations we have with our customers. We're just refining drill paths. We're just adding new metrics. This is just really the beginning of the road, even though the dashboard is not really new, like was mentioned on the slides. It was released in 2023, so last year in February, as a first version, and now we have, I think, third version already out. We usually release some feature, we do some feature releases like every half a year. So I got, just in case you didn't notice, I got back to slides, so I'm gonna skim through all the slides. As you see, that was the original plan, to go through all these metrics. This is the correlation of the replication threats for Pro2. I wanted to show, I couldn't in our environment, but this is from one of our customers, where you can see actually how threats are being mapped for particular tables in the database, and which threat is actually processing the most on which table. Yes, I know that I ran out of time, so I'm going to really skim quickly through the last slides. I was supposed to share this with you, but this is monitoring, and the dashboard is not everything that MDBA includes. There's also some extra benefits and some really pros of having the service, because normally we have those kind of engagements that is very popular, like a database health checks. So we using the same method and approach, like installing something that gathers data, some scripts, collect information, then we analyze this information, we present it in the form of the report, very comprehensive report with recommendations, what you need to do to make it better. So MDBA is sort of like continuous health check, because things are changing, so the value is that you don't have to do this periodically, you're doing this all the time. So we provide customers monthly reports that are actually showing the basic indicators how you are doing last month. Every month, just primary DBA is preparing also the message, which is actually the most read section in our monthly reports. What is the message from my primary DBA? And usually we push recommendations. Okay, we noticed this anomaly, this is what you should do, this is what I can do for you if you're okay, and this is what we should plan and schedule. So this is about monthly reports. Oh, actually I have this device. We can do also a little bit more than that. We're actually, our team is really having a huge extensive expertise in the backend side of the OpenEdge infrastructure, and we can do any project that is related to those areas. We're doing a lot of migrations, covering a lot of projects related to upgrades, any kind of maintenances for customers, and also doing the health checks for the database. For one-off engagements, you don't have to be MDBA to get the services, but again, I have to emphasize, our managed accounts are priority for us. So if any managed account customer wants to do some project, wants to have our involvement, we're part of their team. We're providing expertise and technical advice, which means that they have sort of priority for our resources, so everybody else is sort of waiting in the line, and the lead time sometimes is quite significant. So if you are planning an immigration and you want professional services or consultant helping you, it's good to plan it in advance, right? So you can book the slot. Oh, of course, there's more. I didn't even know there's more. And actually, this is what I said. There are some plans. It's not really important. This is the conversation that can take any time. But this is usually there are two major subscription plans. MDBA Basic, that has all that I described, including access to dashboard, and MDBA Plus, which is actually the same as MDBA Basic in terms of the scope of the services, but also includes some consulting time embedded in monthly fee. Like with a phone subscription, you have certain number of hours, like 10 hours to be used per month. And it doesn't carry over to the next month, so you have to sort of like don't pay anything extra on top of your allowance in a monthly bucket of hours that you get from us. And that's a summary that basically is sort of showing all that I said, and basically that's it. I hope you liked it, and as I'm saying, we're still working very hard to make sure that the dashboard is useful, and not only for us, but also for our customers. I didn't show one thing. All these charts that you show, really, I just remembered, I have to say that. All these charts also have a tab that when you click, I want the grid data. I want just a list. I want the numbers. I prefer numbers. I want to see them. And that's already possible in the dashboard. You click on the grid data, and then you can also click to export it to Excel for any analysis. It's already in the portal. I won't be getting back to this. I can show after the session. Or to PDF, and we're also thinking to some picture formats, some PNG formats, so this graph can be taken elsewhere and processed. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.